Imagine being a teenage prince, standing on a battlefield, watching your father ride into a war he may never return from. The drums thunder, the dust rises, and without knowing it, your destiny is being written in blood and fire. One day history will say you changed the fate of empires not with a single victory, but with a decision so bold it reshaped warfare forever. This is the story of Sultan Murad I. Murad was not born into legend, he was born into uncertainty. In the early 1300s, the Ottomans were not yet an empire. They were a growing frontier state, surrounded by enemies, rivals, and fragile alliances. His father, Orhan Gazi, had expanded Ottoman lands, but every victory came with new dangers. When Murad took the throne in 1362, the empire was strong, but dangerously unstable. Borders were stretched. Local warlords were growing powerful, loyalty was fragile, and worst of all, the army was no longer fully under the Sultan's control. At that time, Ottoman forces were mostly made up of tribal warriors and feudal soldiers. They were brave, yes, but they were loyal first to their clans, their leaders, and their own interests, not to the state, not to the Sultan. In moments of crisis, this could tear the empire apart. Murad saw what others refused to see. An empire cannot survive if its soldiers choose loyalty over law. And so, he made a decision that would shock his world. He would build an army that had no family, no tribe, no loyalty except to him. This idea was terrifying. It was also genius. Murad introduced a system that would become one of the most powerful military institutions in history, the Janissaries. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were taken as children from Christian families in the Balkans through a system known as devshirme. They were converted to Islam, educated, trained, disciplined, and molded into elite warriors. Their past identities were erased. Their new identity was the empire. To modern ears, this sounds cruel, and it was. Families lost sons, childhoods were stolen. But in Murad's mind, he was building something that no rival could match. A standing army that was professional, disciplined, loyal, and permanent. While other empires relied on temporary forces, Murad built a machine, and machines don't hesitate. The Janissaries were paid regular salaries. They lived in barracks. They trained constantly. They used the most advanced weapons of their time. Most importantly, they owed everything to the Sultan: food, education, purpose, power. This made them loyal beyond anything the medieval world had ever seen. Murad didn't just create soldiers. He created a new concept of power. As this system took shape, Murad began pushing deeper into Europe. The Balkans were his target. One by one, cities fell. Adrianople, modern-day Adorn, became his new capital, a symbolic shift that told the world the Ottomans were no longer a regional force. They were now a continental threat. But conquest alone does not make an empire eternal. Murad knew this. He restructured administration. He centralized authority, placed loyal governors instead of tribal chiefs. He created legal systems that reinforced state power. Step by step, he was replacing tradition with control, and this made him enemies both outside and inside. Christian coalitions formed against him. Balkan kings joined forces. Hungarian, Serbian, and Bulgarian rulers tried to halt his advance. They believed Murad's army was still like the others, disorganized, divided, and temporary. They were wrong. The first great test of Murad's new military vision came at the Battle of Maritsa in 1371. Ottoman forces were outnumbered. The enemy was confident. But the Janissaries moved like a single mind, coordinated, disciplined, ruthless. The result was a massacre. Europe was stunned. From that moment on, Murad was no longer just a conqueror. He was a warning. But power always comes with a price. As Murad's control increased, so did the resentment. Local Turkish nobles hated the Janissaries. They saw them as outsiders, tools of tyranny, not true sons of the land. Some whispered rebellion. Others plotted quietly. Murad responded with the same cold clarity that defined his rule. He crushed them. For Murad, the state was everything. The empire was sacred. Anyone who threatened its stability, noble or peasant, was expendable. This was not a kind ruler. This was a builder of systems. Yet despite his ruthlessness, Murad was deeply religious. He believed he was fulfilling divine will. In his mind, the suffering he caused was justified by the order he created. History would remember him not for mercy, but for structure. And structure is what made the Ottomans unstoppable. By the 1380s, Murad controlled vast territories. His army was feared, his administration was efficient. His name echoed across Europe like thunder, but fate was not finished with him. In 1389, Murad faced a massive coalition at the Battle of Kosovo. Serbs, Bosnians, Albanians, and other Balkan forces united in a desperate attempt to stop Ottoman expansion once and for all. The battle was brutal. Dust, screams, steel, thousands died. And in the chaos, something happened that would shock history. A Serbian knight named Mila Kabilik infiltrated the Ottoman camp. Some say he pretended to defect, some say he was captured, but somehow he reached Murad's tent, and there he assassinated the Sultan. Murad died on the battlefield. The ruler who reshaped military history fell not to an army, but to a single blade. Yet here's the twist. His death did not stop the Ottomans, because Murad had already built something greater than himself. The Janissary system lived on. The centralized empire survived. His son Bayezid immediately took control and crushed resistance. The Ottomans would continue expanding for centuries. Murad had transformed power from a person into a system. And systems don't die. Today, when we look back, Murad I is not remembered as the greatest conqueror. He didn't take Constantinople. He didn't rule at the empire's peak. But he did something more dangerous. He invented the future of warfare. Standing armies, professional soldiers, state loyalty, bureaucratic control. These ideas would later shape Europe, modern militaries, and even the world we live in today. Every time you hear about a national army, every time you hear about military academies, every time you hear about soldiers serving a state instead of a king, you are hearing echoes of Murad's vision. It raises an uncomfortable question. Was Murad a genius or a monster? Did he build stability, or did he build a machine that devoured human lives? History rarely gives us simple answers. But one thing is certain. The world before Murad was different from the world after him. If you enjoyed this story, comment below. Do you think Murad was a visionary leader or a ruthless tyrant? Share this video with someone who loves hidden history, and subscribe to Echoes of Times because the past is never really gone. It's just waiting to be heard.